Thank you, Mark. And I want to thank everybody for coming. This is such a wonderful turnout, and it shows a lot about the urgency and importance of the issues that we'll be discussing today. And thanks to the organizers. Thank you, Senator, for coming and getting this going. And I hope you all have a great day talking about these issues. So, you know, this is probably a group that's very well informed. We all read the same climate reports. We all read the news. And every report seems to be bleaker than the last, more alarming than the last. So, you know, last fall, the IPCC report said that with 2 degrees of warming, we'll have massive declines in fishing and the death of nearly all coral reefs in the world. The 4th National Climate Assessment is just unsparing in the strength of statements about the cost of climate change to human health and the economy and planetary support systems. So, you know, we've all read this. We all know this. And these reports and others like them are very important. They raise public awareness of the challenges we face. And despite what some people think, the science behind the reports is really, really compelling. So we have to stand up and take notice of it. Now, the science is very complex, and some of the policy issues and institutional issues that you're going to be discussing today are equally complex. But it seems to me, and this could be debated after I have to leave right after this, so you can disagree with me all you want. There are some things that we need to do that seem really, really crystal clear, right? And that we should be focusing on now, in addition to some of the other things that you're going to be talking about today. And the first, which is a no-brainer, is to put a price on carbon that reflects its social cost. That's something we need to do. And I'll take a little bit of issue about externalities being woefully inadequate. I actually think it's a wonderful piece of economic theory. Before I came to Brown, I taught future policymakers about the basics of microeconomic policy analysis. And there was always a week on externalities. And these, as Mark so well said, are things that happen when agents of the economy and producers and consumers don't factor in the social costs of their actions, whether they're producing something or consuming something. And the most obvious textbook example of an externality has to do with pollution, where consumption, market prices don't reflect the damage that's being done. This isn't new science. This is very, very old science. So the concept of externalities was first formalized in 1920 by an economist named Arthur Pigou in his book, The Economics of Welfare. And he proposed, in addition to formalizing the theory, he proposed how to correct for an externality, which is to impose what has been called by economists since then, not surprisingly, a Pigovian tax, named after him. And the solution is just brilliant in its simplicity. It's dead easy, which is that you impose a tax or do some other policy action that makes the price reflect the damage. That's it. So, this isn't new. This is very old. We've known it for a long time. And, I will say economists are a really contentious lot. We find many, many, many things to argue about, and I think it undermines our profession because people sort of say, how do we believe anything you say? You never agree. But this is one area where there is no disagreement. Only last week, coming out of the annual Economics Association meetings, a group of very prominent economists, including our 3 former Federal Reserve chairs, Ben Bernanke, and Janet Yellen, and Alan Greenspan, I remember his name. They produced a statement that simply says we need a carbon tax. It says it a little bit longer form than that, and they opened it up for economists around the world to sign on. I signed on, and I think it makes a really good statement. So, no-brainer, we need to push on that. The second point that I do want to make, though, is that we can't sit around waiting for a carbon tax to happen. Because if we do that, by the time we get the policies in place to fix what's going on, it's going to be too late to do the remediation and make the changes that we need to not well, to avert really disastrous consequences for the planet. So institutions, whether they're companies or cities or universities, have to start moving to a carbon neutral world now. They have to do it now. And I'm going to brag a little bit about Brown because I think, like many colleges and universities, we're taking the issue seriously. Last month, we made good, or we signed agreements that will let us make good on a commitment that we made 10 years ago to cut on-campus greenhouse gas emissions by 42% below 2008 values, 2007 levels by 2020. So we're coming up on 2020. And we did so in a way that promises to be sustainable and also advance Rhode Island's clean energy agenda. So specifically, what did we do? We signed 2 renewable energy purchase power agreements, one with a Rhode Island-based solar power provider and the other with a Texas-based wind provider, power provider. And basically what this will do is essentially decarbonize all of Brown's purchased energy sources, not on-campus combustion, but what we buy in the form of electricity. And it's going to take us by 2020 not to meet our goal for 2020, but significantly past our goal for 2020, which is terrific. And we're developing our post-2020 plans now with the support of Brown faculty, Brown students. There's been a lot of really terrific engagement to do even better. And of course, when you think about it, what's the next step? And that is to tackle on-campus combustion, or the natural gas that we burn in order to heat all of the buildings and supply the campus. So I'm hoping to announce those plans very, very soon. And I'm excited about the work that we've done. And I'm saying this by way of example. This is the kind of work that cities, universities, companies all around the world are starting to undertake seriously. It's important. So the last point that I'm going to make is about the need for strong, scientifically based advocacy. And again, I'm going to give a Brown example. You have to bear with me, but I like what's going on this campus. So in one example, in 2013-14, Timmons Roberts and a group of students took a deep dive into moving forward a legislative effort of positioning Rhode Island to adaptively plan and manage climate change. And our students, and Timmons, I want to give him credit, but I think it was really student-driven, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was. They partnered with policymakers, they partnered with environmental and planning organizations, they gathered input from coastal stakeholders and local governments. They came to me and said, I think it was probably November, we want to get a law passed by the end of the coming legislative session. And I said, you're crazy, right? You just can't do that. Rhode Island moves too slowly. And lo and behold, by the end of that legislative session, Rhode Island, and again in collaboration, it wasn't just the students, it was a large number of other stakeholders, passed the Resilient Rhode Island Act, which was signed into law then. And so I got a good taste of what Brown students are capable of. Now, I've had discussions since then that this act was a good first step, it's not a good final step, and we need to do more to put teeth into that legislation to make sure that we're really protecting this state from the effects of climate change. But I think it points to the strength of effective advocacy, coalition building, science-based, thoughtful work that communities, students, but people all around the country can do, and that's important. So let me just close with this. I read Monday's Projo. The cover story cited research that was undertaken by URI and the Coastal Resource Management Council. And it really showed in vivid detail how vulnerable this state is. And they honed in on Barrington and Bristol and Warren and what can happen to them in the future in terms of flooding with sea level rise. And the consequences are quite alarming. And like the other things that I've noted, these plans are grounded in science, they're grounded in knowledge and facts, the physics of rising ocean temperatures and changes in currents and everything that we need to know. And it aims, this type of work, aims at really elevating public attention and awareness to the issue of climate change. So, this is just to underscore that, advocating for strong policies, taking strong actions in our own institutions, advocacy, but also this public outreach and awareness, I think, is really important if we're going to make progress. So that's it. I'm looking forward. I have to leave, but I'm going to come back at lunch, and I want to learn a lot about the discussions today. Very exciting, and thanks again for all of you for coming and for your work supporting this agenda.